Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Caruso, and I'm really excited to be here with you today on the Winners in Business podcast. Today, we're talking with Anthony Garbarino. He is the founder and CEO of Currents. They are a B2B marketplace for end-of-life electric and hybrid vehicle batteries. It's really interesting, geeky kind of stuff. And we talked to him about his experience with his family's garbage business and how he turned that into a growing startup. And in this episode, we talked to him about the importance of creativity, curiosity, relationship building, and celebrating your wins on his journey over the last 3.5 years as he has grown this company in the CEO position. It's a great one, so stay tuned and see what he has to say. You have a lot of great nuggets in here. Thank you so much for joining us today, and really excited to dive into this conversation with you. I have a bunch of questions for you, but I would love to kind of kick off learning more about Currents and your work. I know you are a fairly new CEO at a very exciting time, and you have a very big vision for the future and sustainability and all kinds of things we're going to talk about today. So can you just tell us a little bit about what is Currents and what are you doing? What is some of this work that you're involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. But Currents is a business-to-business marketplace in the end-of-life electric and hybrid vehicle battery industry. So we work with suppliers like auto dismantlers, automotive OEMs, mechanic shops, collision centers, whoever gets a vehicle or battery at end of life. And then we help them understand what the battery is. For example, what the chemistry of that battery is. Is it nickel metal hydride? Is it lithium ion? And then ultimately, what's the value and best use case for that battery? Because there's multiple different use cases depending on the remaining life of a battery. And then we connect that supplier with the correct buyer and help them value the battery and sell it. So at its simplest level, we're a marketplace, but we're also working on a lot of different SaaS style tools and some other solutions that are kind of in stealth mode right now to ultimately enable the marketplace. So there's a lot of supply chain implications and a lot of other supporting aspects that go into solving pain points in this industry to help the marketplace operate fluidly.
It's so interesting because it sounds very complex. It's not just, as you said, the technology that supports all of that, but it's based on like what battery life is left and a lot of terms I don't honestly understand.
Yeah. Well, initially the vision was, I'll just make a marketplace and everyone will want to use it. And that didn't quite pan out. So we figured out, as we were developing and making the marketplace, we're working with a lot of users and customers and found out significant pain points that would prevent any marketplace from operating fluidly. So it is, new for a lot of these users. A lot of these folks have been in the automotive supply chain for a while, but with the move to electrification with both hybrid and electric vehicles, there's a whole host of now new pain points that they're facing. So we like to say at a high level, we enable our suppliers to participate in the future of mobility. And I'm sure we'll get into a lot of it, but yeah, it was a lot more than just, we'll make a vertically dedicated channel to batteries and everyone will just switch and jump on in. So yeah, it's been definitely a learning experience.
So I'm curious, tell me about your background and what got you interested in this particular industry. Is it a tech background and you wanted to build the marketplace and you saw this need? Or how much did you know about this end-of-life battery whole world that we're talking about right now?
Yep. So I'm a non-technical founder. I'm what they call a sales founder. But my background comes from the garbage and recycling industry. So we have a family business outside of Portland, Oregon, that is the garbage company that comes to your house and picks up your trash. Mm-hmm. So I was driving a garbage truck 4.5 years ago. And it was while I was working there, I started brainstorming what's the future of this industry. And the first thing I thought of was EV and hybrid batteries. What are we going to do with them when they start showing up in our dumpsters? So that question introduced me to the field of second life energy storage system integrators who were buying end-of-life EV batteries and repurposing them into stationary grid-connected energy storage systems. And I was immediately obsessed because I thought this is a potential solution to what is going to be a gigantic waste stream. And in the garbage industry, the sustainability can sometimes be, we take it to the landfill and we bury it. And I always kind of questioned, is that the best we could do with that? So I just got really curious and I reached out to all these energy storage companies. And a question I had for everyone was, how do you source the batteries? And I consistently heard pain point until one of the companies I spoke with said verbatim, it is the wild, wild west of buying batteries today. And I thought, sounds like I've just identified a market need for a marketplace. How hard could this be to start a software company? I'm just going to go for it. And I bootstrapped the company. This is in 2021. So I bootstrapped the company for about a year, hired a digital product agency to build me a prototype. And then I just went to any relevant industry event and trade show with my computer and said, I'm Anthony Garbarino with Currents. I'm making this vertically dedicated channel. You should use this to buy and sell batteries. And initially the vision was I was going to do exactly to eBay, because I'd only seen batteries sold on eBay. I was going to do to eBay what StockX did. StockX made a vertically dedicated channel to sneakers and essentially stole all the Jordan business away, and has since, made moats around their moats by expanding that business into, a whole fashion marketplace. So that's kind of what I was alluding to at the beginning was, I'll just make this vertically dedicated channel. Everyone will love it. All the Jordan sneakerheads will come and buy batteries on my platform. So no
not quite
industry outsider, no software experience. It's my first time working at a software company. So it's been, my goodness, if it weren't for the good advisors I have around me, it would have been a rough beginning, but luckily I had people guiding me along the way.
That's awesome. So what are some of the pain points? You're referring to some of the pain points in the supply chain itself. And I'm also curious, just kind of personally, about the pain points for you personally, kind of getting into the software side of all of this and figuring all of that out. Maybe we should start with the pain points of the supply chain and like, what are you solving in addition to just sourcing of these things?
So without getting too deep into the weeds, because we are fundraising right now, so I do have my 20-minute pitch down like the back of my hand, but I'll try and keep it pretty high level. So I mean, put pretty simply, it's very difficult to value a battery, and there are multiple different value layers, I like to say. There's primarily 3 levels of battery value. There's the recycling value, which is if you shred a battery and recover the critical minerals from it, and that's driven off the battery's chemistry. Then there's the core value of a battery, which is if the battery is able to be rebuilt and used in another vehicle, or if it's able to be repurposed into a non-vehicle secondary use like energy storage. So that's called the core value. It can be roughly 3 times to 5 times the value of that recycling value. But then there's the highest level, which is the retail value of a battery, which is if I sold you a battery that you could put into your car today and it would power your vehicle. And that's sometimes 3 to 5x the value of the rebuildable value. So that battery value 5x is every increase that you go into. And today, no one really knows what condition their battery is in. Not many people even know what chemistry their battery is. They'll get a battery to their facility and call a recycler and say, hey, I have 10 batteries. What will you pay me for them? And the recycler will say, well, what is it? And they'll go, 1's gray, 7 are black. The other one is looking like this. So it's a very opaque market, and there's not many tools for these suppliers to understand and value their inventory. So one of the tools that we've built to solve that pain point is what we call Insight, and it's our software battery identification and valuation tool. So you can search by year, make, model, or VIN. For example, you can say I have a 2019 Tesla Model S, and we'll say this is exactly the chemistry of that battery. This is the chemistry type. This is the cell manufacturer. This is way more information than you'll need around that battery. But what everyone's trying to understand is, what's that recycling value? What's the base value of this battery? So that's one of the first tools that we're launching. The beta is out now, and we're launching that publicly here in the coming months. So that's one of the solutions to the opaque market. A few of the other solutions I would love to tell you all about, but for the sake of protecting our competitive landscape runway, whatever you want to call it, I should probably keep my mouth shut on that. And I don't know if a lot of your listeners know the battery supply chain very well, so maybe
I would guess not.
So maybe what's more relevant for them are maybe now going over to my pain points. And I mean, you hear all the time about like you have to be this overly optimistic, almost like naive founder to think that you can just jump in and do something. And I think my naivete was to my advantage when I started the company, because literally I was like, how hard is it to build a marketplace and start a software company? Anyone can do that. So I was very fortunate to be part of, it's called Entrepreneurial Organization. It's basically a community of business owners from my family business. That's how I was able to join that. And you meet with your same small group once a month called your forum. So it was me and 7 other guys, and they're all, 10, 15 years older than me and really successful in their careers. And I got in that circle with them, and I just thought, these guys are really crushing it. Like I gotta step my game up. And ultimately, like they inspired me along with a few other things to just chase my curiosity. And that's how I arrived at Currents. But one of the guys in that group is actually the CEO of the agency that I hired to build the prototype and initial marketplace for us. So a lot of my pain points were alleviated from being surrounded by people who have been there and done that. And a lot of those kind of snowballed into other introductions of, hey, you should talk to this guy. He's a CEO coach and he can help you, navigate a lot of the first time founder mistakes. And that introduction has, I still meet with him once a month for 2 hours. And having someone you can bounce things off of, like I literally asked him early on, I go, how do you even raise money? Like, what do I like go to the venture capitalist office? Like I had never done anything like it. So as like stupid as those questions seem to so many people, it's like, if you don't have any resources, you don't know what to do. So I'm a huge believer in find people who are more successful than you and who have done it and just say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing. And I admire the work that you've done and I need help and support. And what I've found in this journey is people will take your call. There's this like unspoken mantra, I guess you could call it, in this ecosystem where successful people want to help out other people who are trying to do things, trying to build things. And, I'm not at a point where I can be like an advisor to people, but I do want to get to that point in my career someday where I can be a helping hand, because there have been like hundreds of doors that have opened to me from people who have asked nothing in return. And it's been extremely helpful, even if it's just like a 30-minute call of someone sharing their experience. So it like just compounds your knowledge and you just hear from experience. And it's lonely sometimes as a CEO. And it's really nice to have people you can just openly like word vomit to, like, oh, I'm struggling with this or that. Like, what the heck do I do here? So I don't know if that directly answered your question of how I alleviated pain points, but a lot of it I would say is, I owe so much thanks to the support I've gotten. And I can't stress and encourage other people who are even just interested in starting something just to talk to people about it, because people want to help you out.
Yeah, it's so nice to kind of like stand on the shoulders of people who have been there already and have fought the battles, and then to be able to do that in return to other people. And you're 3 years in. I mean, you're somewhat seasoned at this point, right? So there's people who are 0 years in and learning from you. And that's a lot of the people I'm sure who are listening to this as well. So we thank you for sharing. In terms of like, I'm just thinking of technology, right? It's always changing. Building a marketplace, I have never built it myself, but I have spent enough time working with similar companies and hearing the challenges. And it's a challenging thing, just the technology part of it. And then there's this marketplace and the supply chain that, as you said, is very opaque and has a lot of pain points to it. How do you kind of balance those two things? You want to have a marketplace that's really seamless and works so easily for people and has a good value proposition for the users. And at the same time, I would imagine things are constantly changing and you're constantly pulling in new data points and things. So how do you build the right team? Or, I know you're not necessarily the one in the back coding it all. So how do you figure out how to keep up with all that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And honestly, I would have to say, like, technology wise, yes, it is, again, I'm a non-technical founder. So if there are like technical listeners, they're gonna be like, wow, this guy's a freaking dork. He has no idea. But I'm very lucky to have our lead software developer who has 25 years of experience of building products from the ground up. And he's so funny. He's like, Anthony, I can build you anything. The question is, should we build it? Do people want it? Is this actually solving a pain point where people will adopt it? And especially with a marketplace, like there's always competition to your marketplace. Even if there's no direct marketplace competitor, there's alternatives, or there's ways that people are transacting anything without your platform. So the hardest part of a marketplace is, this is widely covered, but it's the chicken and the egg. It's how do you get users to your platform? And the classic dilemma is, do you get supply first or do you get demand first? And we took the route of supply first, and we partnered with Nissan in 2022. And that's how we really got off the ground and how we were able to fundraise. But my favorite marketplace founder story is, I think it's the founder of Bumble, the dating app. She would go to Greek rows at colleges, and she would go into frats and have fake accounts of women and go to all the frat guys and go, look at all the hot girls on my app. You guys got to sign up so you can match with them on here. And then she would run across the street to the sorority and go, everyone from Sigma Chi is on my app. You guys got to get on here. So there's a lot of cool stories about how founders have like brute force the chicken and the egg problem. So it's, we're still running into that. We're really early stage, but we have significant supply. And now it's kind of like this chasing game. It's all right, we've gotten supply on. Now we've got to go find demand, and we have to find demand signals to push back to the supply. So it's early dynamics, but I don't think the technology is the bottleneck. Technology takes time. It's people building it. So I'd say the hardest part is managing stakeholder expectations, because we show a lot of cool features that we're building, but it's not like, and next week these will be done.
Right, sure.
It's like, this is a 6 to 9 month roadmap that, is not taking into account any speed bumps. So
right,
it's
of course.
balancing how many resources do we have? How quickly can we develop? Should we put our foot on the gas and bring in more resources to get there faster? Or is the market ready for this? And the best way to figure that out is to put your solution in front of someone and say, hey, we did it. Are you using it? Does this actually solve a problem for you? So again, I don't know if that totally answered your question, but the technology I don't think is the biggest bottleneck for for a marketplace in general, but a lot of the tools that are supporting that marketplace are tricky, because now you're talking about large amounts of data. How do we ingest all that data? How do we make sure it's clean? How do we present it to the user in a valuable way? So it's a lot of work on the front end, and I'd say that's almost the way it should be, is that you want to be doing the most discovery possible to take in as much feedback as you can from potential users, and then say, all right, we've heard this consistently across multiple different segments, and now we know that we can build this and it will get adopted. And now we're in that period of, okay, we've launched stuff. Are people paying for it?
Right.
And now we're seeing a lot of free users sign up, and we're saying, all right, why aren't they converting to paid? So it's the classic, all right, we launched, and now we got to fine tune this machine based on, revisiting some of the assumptions that we made in the earlier development phases.
Now, I know you said you've been a CEO for like 3.5 years, and you've talked already about some of the things that have really helped you, like the countless relationships that you've made of people who have kind of helped you along the way. What are some of the lessons that you've learned? I know you don't feel like you can teach the next generation quite yet, but I know you've learned a lot of lessons. It's CEO, that is just always quite a journey. So what are some of the things that you have uncovered in the last 3 years that you really didn't know going into this?
Yeah. Well, I would say the role of the CEO is to set the vision of the company, make sure that everyone feels empowered and aligned with that overall vision, and then just to get out of their way. Like, I've been really lucky to be able to hire people who are all A players in all their roles, and they all do their job better than I could. So it's not like which is like almost probably the best thing for an employee. Like, if I was a technical founder, like Matt is our lead software developer, I would be like going line through his code and being like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? And he like shows me demos. He's like, look, it works. And I'm like, great. You're a magician, man.
Why'd you do that?
This is awesome. Like, I can't wait to go out and sell this. So ultimately, I think that's the role of the CTO is, support your team, because one of the hardest things is hiring, and the amount of time that it goes into recruiting. And I'm such an intuition-based person, like sometimes to a fault. Like, I'll fall in love with someone after the first interview. I'm like, oh, that's the guy, no questions asked. And then I'll like think about it for a day or two. I'm like, no, that's definitely not the guy, actually. So the hard part is there's so much time that goes into that whole process. And then when you find that right person, like, retention is so important. So we're a fully remote team, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. There's things I love, things I hate, but we do like once a quarter, we all get together and just work together somewhere. So, do like team bonding things, trust falls, your typical offsites, but just making sure people feel engaged and bought into the vision. And, the CEO, you're doing sales 100% of the time, regardless of, you just have to change it based on your audience. Is this a customer? Hey, you should buy this. Is this an employee? Hey, you should buy into the vision. Is this an investor? Hey, look at this up into the right graph. So it's just, Yeah, and I don't want that to come across in a way that it's like slimy sales, but
Yeah.
you're literally just selling everyone on the vision and the business. So once you have those people, retain them, and it is really cool to see how far people can go when they have a long leash. Don't get me wrong, like I hold the team accountable. We have
Sure.
quarterly goals that we check in on every week, but they have a part in what those goals are. I don't set hours for anyone. It's, hey, we need to have some overlap, but it's all based on output. And it says, hey, everyone hit all your quarterly goals. And that actually came from my CEO coach advisor. He started a company in, I think, like 2010 or so, and was one of the first people who did fully remote work. And everyone was saying, this is never going to work. No one's ever going to get anything done. And he adopted that strategy. He said, we never had any hours. We had quarterly goals. You had 3 big deliverables every quarter. I checked in on him every week. And he started that company without taking any outside investment and had an exit and never needs to work again. So, and then he looked back at the people and goes, I guess remote work can work if you do it right. So,
Exactly.
he's been just a godsend. And, when it comes to managing people, it's just, people are very, very capable and they don't want to be micromanaged. And we've all been in a position where we've been micromanaged, and
Yes.
it sucks. And it's cool because we are delivering, we are building cool products, and I feel like everyone on my team feels like they're, I'd be curious if they were talking now, not me, but from my perspective, they seem engaged and interested and bought in. And yeah, it seems like things are well. So trust in your people. And, there's the age old mantra, hire slow, fire fast. So, take your time. And luckily we haven't had to fire anyone, and everyone has been delivering and great. So it's made me a very happy boy.
I mean, you must be really good at delivering and defining the vision and the mission, because like you said, it's great if you have these heads all across the board who can kind of run things and people can be part of the quarterly goals, but they have to know what that ties into. And I talk to so many CEOs where I feel like that's just what's missing, is they're too deep in the weeds on whatever they're geeking out about in the moment.
Yeah.
And they're not really like eyes on what they're trying to achieve and how we're going to get there. So that's kudos to you on getting that all together.
I appreciate that. And that's come with a lot of practice, because the first full-time employee I brought on a little over a year ago, he lives in San Diego, and we rented a Airbnb in La Jolla, and I just brought a big whiteboard. I'm like, all right, Chris, get ready for the fire hose. Here's everything, man. He was just like, his head was spinning, and I was like, all right, I got to get a little better at this. We're onboarding employees because this is just chaotic. But yeah, it's such a niche industry. And I mean, like, attach any external stakeholder to this, like investors, especially like generalist investors. I almost am like, look, you're not going to get it in 30 minutes. And I've gotten a lot better at getting the message across, but it's just so niche and intricate. And then at the deeper that you get into it, you start to realize, like, whoa, oh, this is blocking that, and that would enable that. And if we just built that, that could unlock that. And that's the fun part, is when you see people start to get it too. And you're like, yes, that's exactly right. So now, can you build that?
Right.
So,
You need more people who can geek out on this topic.
Yeah, and it's fun. I was able to secure like a key hire. I brought him on as co-founder. He's industry expert, has 10 years of experience from one of the largest companies in the space, remanufacturing batteries on behalf of OEMs. And he has just brought our credibility and knowledge 100x. So it's been a godsend to have him. He's been on since January, and the velocity of the business has just doubled since he's been on board. And awesome. We like travel around a lot together, and we're like, we'll have a great meeting. We're like, man, this is going really well. Like we should go have a drink to celebrate this. That was awesome. So it's been fun. And I try and sit back and, when things are going well, full transparency, I'm like, I'm going to dance after that meeting, just like blast some music, because the low times really suck. So when the good times come around, I tell people, I'm like, squeeze this, like, don't forget this moment. Like, this feels good. Let's celebrate. Let's have fun with this, because you need to remember those times when the times are rough, and what goes up must come down, and it's a bumpy ride.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people love to talk about the great moments. Like, everything's amazing, but I mean, every entrepreneur feels the pressure of many of those moments that are not so nice and feel really horrible and really don't want to talk about it. So even just bringing that up, I think, is important for everyone to hear. I know you mentioned early on that this kind of all started when you're working in the family business, doing garbage and just thinking outside the box. And I think that's a lesson to take away for everybody, is that no matter what it is that you're doing and in whatever space, it's that curiosity of like, where is this going? I think that's one of the first things that you said is like, what's the future of this? Where,
Yeah.
other than burying this all in the ground, what else could we be doing? And what,
Yeah.
thinking about like hybrid and EV batteries are going to be flooding these landfills
Yeah.
if they're not found. I think every industry has that, and that's the
Yeah.
key to a great business, is being able to see outside of what you're doing right now.
Yeah. And I actually, I like to joke, like I didn't really grow up until I was like 27 or 28. Like I was just kind of going through life being like, da, 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 da. And, the reason I actually started this company was my dad, who was the owner of the business, ended up getting cancer and passing away in 2020. And the money I inherited from him was how I started this company. So back to your point on the low times, like that was the most stressful time, like not even just of my career, but of my life. I'm like, I am lighting the money on fire that my dad left behind, going to these trade shows, and people are all telling me, don't need it, bad idea, don't do it, don't do it. I probably wasn't sleeping for like 3 to 6 months straight in 2021. So very, very low time. But it was right around then that I reached out to one of my good buddies who's a really successful, smart, thoughtful guy. And I said, like, what separated you? Like, how did you get so good at what you're doing? And it was exactly that. He said, we're just curious. Be curious about everything. And then just dig deep and dive deep with people. And it's crazy the parallels I've seen with software development. And that is, you can build whatever you want, but you need to be curious and obsessed with your customers and have them tell you what they want. And then don't just say, oh, that's what they want, we're going to build it. Like go out and validate that with 10, 50, 100 people. And you're never done doing discovery. It's always, well, what about this? What about that? And the more curious you are, people love talking about themselves. It's like, oh, tell me about yourself and your business. What's bothering you? And people just hand you gigantic pain points on a silver platter and go, gosh, if someone just solved this, we would pay them a lot of money. And you're like,
you're like, give me 6 months.
Yeah, maybe we should build that. So that's where it starts to get fun. The hard part is you need relationships to do that. And, you need to put yourself out there. And I was, I wouldn't say it comes across like I'm all like happy-go-lucky extroverted, but like going to those trade shows, not knowing anyone and just walking up to these like established businesses, like, hey, want to use my marketplace, is terrifying. And it was difficult for me, and I'm pretty extroverted. So I don't mean to like play it off like, oh, all you got to do is go talk to these people. Like getting told no sucks, and you have to get told no and rejected all the time, and then just go like amnesia, like, all right, on to the next, here we go. Which I tip my cap to like pure salespeople who are doing like 50 to 100 calls a day and getting like 100 no's a day, because it sucks, but it's just what you have to do. And it's wild the value that you can uncover when you just start to build deep relationships with people, and not even deep, just curious about their business and what that can unfold. So I don't know how I wandered off down that tangent. I don't even think you asked
a question. Very good tangent.
I just freaking ran with it.
Yeah, no, I think that journey is so powerful, and it's only been 3.5 years. You're clearly early on in the potential of what this business could be. But that's what I love about doing these podcasts, is that there's so many lessons, and it's the story and the relationships that make these companies. I mean, it's not just great idea and you were a genius and you pulled it together. That's pretty much never how it happens. And so hearing the story, I appreciate you sharing it, because that's really, I think, what other people connect to, is whatever version, wherever they are in their journey, and how that connects to wherever you were at that time. That's what people, I think, find meaningful.
I'm trying to Google the book real quick. I think it's called Originals by Adam Grant. Yes, it is. He has, and there was like, it was a few months back that I read this, so I'm probably going to butcher it, but there was basically like 2 types of innovation that he called out. There's like the strike of genius innovation, where that's usually like, the young founder who is a genius and makes something crazy because they're a genius, and everyone's like thinks that's innovation. But like the second type of innovation is just from like continuous learning and evolving. And that's why you see a lot of these successful founders who like start businesses in their 30s, 40s, 50s, because all they've been doing is just taking in information and like continuously evolving, growing, and learning. And then they finally like can put it all together, and they'll try all these different ideas until they're like, wow, this one actually works. So it was like this really kind of beautiful thought that's like, you could be, 60s, even 70s. Who cares? Like, just the innovation takes forever. I think I got really lucky on timing with mine. And yeah, it's just the curiosity. It'll just continue to show things, which I hope, who knows what I'm gonna be doing after this, but I don't know. I hope my curiosity leads me into something else fun down the road too.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of personality just kind of that is in you. That's not something that's going to change. And Adam Grant has such great things to say.
And something for your listeners, like I said, that wasn't always me. I was not that guy at like 25, 26 years old. I'm 32 now, but for listeners who are like, oh man, like I'll never be able to do that. Like, take it from me. You can definitely do that. And it's not that difficult. You just be curious all of a sudden. And then you're like, well, I am a curious guy now. Like, sometimes I have trouble sleeping. And my sister always tells me, she's like, every time you say that you have a hard time sleeping, you're reinforcing that in your head. You should always say, I'm a great sleeper and I fall asleep easily all the time. So it's like the lies that we tell ourselves start to become the truth sometimes.
Yeah, that's a whole piece I'm sure that CEOs deal with all the time. Is kind of like the story that you tell yourself about your journey and how that impacts the end result, whatever that story is and how that can change your future. It's a very interesting concept. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I know that EV and hybrid batteries is not something I knew anything about before I looked at your website and before we're chatting, but it's interesting how you are taking a problem that I think we all can see is going to be a huge problem, whether or not you know much about the industry, and solving it, and all the lessons that you've shared along the way about how to turn that into a business and how to really speak to the end users on both sides. In your case, that you have to serve kind of the suppliers and those who can use them. So I've learned a lot, and I really thank you for sharing all of that with us today.
Of course. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. I hope it was valuable for your listeners. Honestly, I thought we were going to go just talk about batteries the whole time. And I kind of just went off to wherever I thought we were going. So yeah, hopefully people enjoy. And yeah, if I can help anyone out, if anyone's like curious about my journey, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to share what I know with folks if they're curious about, how do I start this, or how do I get off the ground? And it's cool. And I even have some friends who are like curious about it, like thinking about starting things. I'm like, let me tell you everything I know. And it's like, I wish I had someone like that when I started. So it's once like lay everything out, it's like, oh, that's actually not that bad. And there's so many tools out there now to start a business. It's like the easiest time ever to start a business. So yeah, I'd say go for it. You only live once, so take a swing.
Sounds good. I completely agree. All right. Well, thank you so much. We will share all of your contact information and all of that, and really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Liz.